System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Thursday, February 26th. I'm Amin TMK alongside Amoja, Lil Tanky Summer. Amoja, hello. Happy Thursday. How are you? How are you doing in these times? How was your last few days?
We're still alive. That means we're winning. So much winning.
Yeah, that's Charlie Sheen reference. Or Donald Trump reference from last night's or 2 nights ago State of the Union address.
Man,
we're winning, everyone. It's
almost like he's trying to prepare everybody. It's about to be a couple hard ass rounds. Like, well, we up on the cards. You know what I'm saying? We won round 1, round 2, round 3. Do not think about anything else that happens in the fight.
Yeah, exactly. But, I wanted to talk today just a little bit about, China's participation within sort of this battleground of the global South versus the West. We hear a lot of people, and I'm not saying that the people who say these things are not smart and accurate in their analysis, but we hear them say things like, oh, China should do more. China should, do this and that. And China should put themselves in harm's way for this, that, and the third. And, I do understand the desire for that. But let's talk about what China is doing, because it's quite a lot. It's quite a lot. So this is our very good friend, Victor Gao. Go ahead and play this, and maybe we can talk a little bit about China, a little bit about Iran, and a little bit how all these things sort of are related.
What do you think of this? What does it say?
Thank you very much. Both China and Iran are two fully independent countries with their sovereignty. And there is no international law which prohibits China and Iran to engage with each other in commercial transactions. And China happens to produce some of the most sophisticated missiles of all kinds. And it's absolutely right for China and Iran to size up each other and engage in whatever economic and commercial transactions they desire to do that, including involving such military missiles. And I think the whole world should be put on notice that both China and Iran will have full sovereign right to do such commercial transactions with each other, and no country should pretend to be surprised.
So just some thoughts, because of course we're hearing that China, they want to paint China as the bad guy for helping Iran, but obviously we know different. We know that Iran is on the right side here. Just what are your thoughts on what Victor Gao said, and just in general, China and Iran, and just sort of that larger global South unity?
So first off, to the question at large, right? China should do more. I think once again, Americans have such an understanding of violence as like the only way that looks like action is happening. Like they only understand action through violence, right? Like, for example, think about watching someone that is out of control on an interstate. They're drunk, they're weaving all over the way. You know what I'm saying? Like, doing something is more like helping cars get out of the way of the car that's speeding and weaving and dashing like it's drunk, right? Doing something is not also driving all out of the road, wild and crazy, causing that's what Americans want to see, right? You have to understand that someone has to be the adult in the room. And that's hard. That is hard for Americans to hear. It's hard for liberals to hear because they're so still entrenched in the understanding of Western action as inherently good, right? China is a nuclear power. The United States is a nuclear power. All conventional wisdom says two nuclear powers should do everything possible to avoid direct military confrontation because the risks of escalation are too high. What is the get off lane? China doing something doesn't look like directly engaging in military combat with the United States of America. There's nothing that the Chinese would do that would risk such an open confrontation because they understand the risk to the world is too high. Also, according to Sun Tzu, it doesn't make any sense to engage the Americans. The Chinese have stated several times they want to do business. Victor Gao is demonstrating that business once again. There's nothing in the world that says two nations can't do this type of commerce. In fact, the West does this commerce all the time. The Americans sell the Israelis all kinds of weapons, as do the Spanish, as do the British, as do the Italians. Everyone sells weapons, and this is not a new thing. Like even this type of weapon, an anti-ship weapon, okay? It reminds me of the Falkland Island War that happened in the 80s with British Margaret Thatcher, against the Argentinian people, right? And the Chinese, I'm sorry, not the Chinese, at that time, the French had commercial relations with Argentina. Now, the Chinese actually have quite a bit of work with commerce with the Argentinians now. But at the time, France was a major trading partner, and France had sold the Argentinians a missile system called the Exocet. And it famously was used to damage a British warship, and this was one of the biggest embarrassments to the United Kingdom really since World War II, because it was supposed to be, Britain going down there and showing the Argentinians what's what. And mostly that is what happened in that war, except for the fact that they had that loss and that it was out there for the world to see. Somewhere beyond all of that conversation, even for a nation as friendly to the West as Argentina, right? The West pulled together and said, no, we will not sell these types of weapons to non-Westerners, right? Once again, China doesn't have any de facto loyalty to those type of backdoor deals, right? Iran has a need for those type of missiles. China makes those types of missiles. It's just perfect. That's a perfect example of China doing something that it can do, right? It doesn't make sense for the Chinese Navy to engage with the American Navy. No one on earth should want to see that. Not Chinese citizens, not American citizens. No one should want to see China and America go to war because humanity will lose. But China does what it can to help bring about this multipolar world. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't say, oh, these countries are the winners and they get to be the winners forever. They're shaping a new world. And people, again, it is just the nature of people in the West to inherently be dismissive of non-Western countries. I remind you again, Iran is a country with 90 million people. That is twice and some change the population of Canada. Could you imagine someone telling Canada what missiles they could and could not buy and who they could and could not buy them from? No, you wouldn't accept that at all. But everyone just de facto accepts that people should be able to dictate to a nation of 90 million people who they can and who they cannot do business with, especially in the era of free trade and globalism. So that's just Victor Gao saying, yeah, we might have sold something. So what? That's that new confidence that you're starting to see, especially with the Chinese, the government class, the military class. Everybody was talking about the Chinese general that got removed a month or two ago. And the scuttlebutt is he was too afraid of what conflict would look like. So even though China doesn't want to go to war, they want generals that understand what that war looks like, that have the capacity to plan for such a war, that are willing to do the strategic engagement that ensures that in that case, right, it's not the worst case scenario for them. That's what the generals are supposed to do. We're getting a little bit of that in America. I mean, with all of the rumors of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, like having to pull the president aside and being like, is this Iran thing really worth it? If the rumors in DC are to be believed.
Let's get into the weeds a little bit shall we? This is some information that we got. This is from Shanaka Pereira. China just published annotated satellite imagery over every F-22 Raptor in Israel's Ovada Air Base, each aircraft individually tagged in Chinese characters on Weibo. 11 stealth fighters that cost $67 billion to develop for the sole purpose of being invisible, cataloged, and distributed on social media like a restaurant menu. The same week, China sold Iran CM-302s. We already talked about supersonic anti-ship missiles. The same week, China photographed every warship leaving Bahrain. And today, as Geneva talks begin, Politico dropped the real bombshell buried beneath the diplomacy. Senior Trump advisors prefer Israel to strike Iran first because the politics are a lot better. Again, I think that it's important to acknowledge that not every single weapon system is available to everyone. And, you know, again, I think we can continue to talk about Iran and this idea that China is not helping. Do you agree that that economic warfare is warfare? If you agree that economic warfare is warfare, then you must believe that China is helping many countries fight against the West. But if you view only, and give me one second. If you view only warfare as killing, boots on the ground, shoot, pew, pew, then you have more work to do.
100%. I mean, it just goes back to, again, the American understanding of war and battle is kinetic exchange. You know what I'm saying? Explosions. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? That is what, for better or for worse, that's what Americans think war is. They don't think war is telling countries, we're not going to tell you can't sell to this country, but we're going to tell you if you sell to this country, we're going to put a 15% tariff on every single product from your country that goes into the American market. Like, do you understand what an incredible tax that is? How incredibly coercive that is? Again, right? The left and the liberals are supposed to be people that are against coercion. You understand it on an individual level as it relates to your personal choices, but then they don't apply this type of praxis to nation states. They don't think about the ways that the United States absolutely coerces nations to induce results that are more favorable to them. Look at what's happened in Venezuela. You know, they're able to sell petroleum products to Cuba, but they can no longer give them away, right? Because America is, again, attempting to induce a government failure on Cuba. Who suffers? Do you think it's the government class? I mean, certainly, sure, but sanctions always hurt the average person more. So when all of these people are out there virtue signaling about free Iran, well, the best thing you could do is put some fucking sanctions relief on Iranians, right? Not only does that not cost you anything, it saves lives. It saves American lives. It saves Iranian lives. It saves people that don't give a fuck about the politics one way or the other. Right? The janitor that just has to go through his day and live, now he can buy a stick of butter to feed his family. The teacher, that is going to get gas to go to the grocery store, she can now do that. Like that, you see what I'm saying? Like sanctions relief is how you help Iran, not war. But that's a great example of, again, China doing what they can. This is the same China that it has 52 nations in Africa that are duty free, where they're literally charging them no tariffs at all, for their products, to bring their products into the market, into Chinese markets. I mean, that is exceptional. That's good for the people that are shipping. That's good for the Chinese consumers, right? This is the thing that Americans seem to miss about tariffs, which is so funny because now the Supreme Court has come back and been like, no, this was illegal. Get our money back. Well, who's going to get it? The corporations are the ones that are going to get this $152 billion worth of tariffs that have been raised. None of that's going to be passed down to the consumer. It's all going to go to the shareholder. So again, Americans get taxed twice. And Trump has already said, fuck that. I'm going to do what I do. 15% tariff on the Supreme Court. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you're doing this commerce and you're selling goods to countries, especially goods that the West doesn't want you to sell, like that is a liberatory act. Like they are giving the Iranian government the tools that it needs to better defend themselves. And if you're against like oppression, if you're against domination, if you're against hegemony, it's hard to be against that. Like you either have to love the concept of what America claims to be, or you have to embrace empire.
You mentioned that. Let's talk a little bit about Cuba. This is from our good friend, Jeremy Ward 33, also known as Amazon Piss Jugs. China approves U.S. $80 million. I'm sorry, approves $80 million in U.S. million. Approves $80 million U.S. in emergency aid to Cuba and donates 60,000 tons of rice. Assistance includes financial resources and food amidst an energy crisis worsened by the U.S. invasion of Venezuela. Jeremy saying the U.S. ruthlessly starves out 11 million Cubans while telling you China is the defining threat of this century. And it just, we've been talking about it, but remember I was always saying like people who are involved in like are mad at Russia for the special military operation do not understand that in many ways the special military operation is helping Palestine. It allows a lot of the weapons and, tactical energy, strategic energy to be put in Ukraine against Russia instead of it being utilized in the Middle East. And this is a way that, again, it doesn't seem as if Russia is helping. But let's be real. Russia is helping Burkina Faso right now. Ibrahim Traore has already mentioned this. I don't have a problem when Russia comes in mines because they pay the mining fees, they mine what they say, and they adhere to safety protocols. So I have no problem when the Russians come in, but I do have an
But to your point, right? Not only, right, do you get what the Russians say they're going to do? Now, all of a sudden, Burkina Faso isn't being raided by Boko Haram and, oh no, all of the gold was stolen, right? Because the French are running ops with these Islamic fundamentalists that are terrifying these nations, right? Like they're double dipping. Not only are you stealing the gold, and paying an extremely poor rate to the countries that they're depriving of these mineral resources, and then complaining that the immigrants from these nations come to their nations, right? You rob their nations and make it impossible for them to have a standard of living, but then you don't even honor the incredibly egregious contracts that you have put in place that are totally colonial or at best neo-colonial, and then beyond all of that exploitation, still double dip, pay organizations to go in and destabilize these countries because you're cut in on that back end and you're buying the gold that they steal at an even greater discounted rate. I mean, that's how dirty the West is playing, especially countries like France. And Russia provides an alternative to that. Again, you don't have to think Russia is great. We're not here to tell you countries that are good or bad. We're here to report what is happening from a geopolitical point of view.
one more thing I wanted to share. And this is something, again, that I've been talking to a lot of my friends about who send me things like, oh, the world is ending. Oh, the world is such a bad place. Oh, there's nothing left. The economy, the ecology, the cultural, the spiritual aspects of society are breaking down. No, that's happening in the West. The West is breaking down. The West is having a ecological, economic, spiritual, cultural collapse. This is from Reuters. Reports that rare earth shortages are worsening for U.S. aerospace and semiconductor firms, namely rare earths such as iridium and scandium, which are almost entirely produced in China. We talk about the energy capabilities of China, the military capabilities of China, but rare earths is really where they are light years away, or light years further than the West. And we hear Scott Bessent say things like, we're going to catch up, we're going to ramp up, we're going to do this. And it sounds like when people say things like, oh, to Europe, oh, Europe, you need to ramp up your military. Money does not, I know this is a tough thing for people in the West, people who are capitalists to understand. Money does not buy anything and everything. It just doesn't. It can't buy an Orishnik. It can't buy, this technology that China has. It can't. The only way that you can do that is by having good relationships, allies, working together with other countries. So again, the United States is hurting itself. It's hurting its allies, and it's certainly hurting its citizens by not willing to just open up trade with China. Put all of this aspect of global hegemony aside. Let's build a utopia with all countries in mind, and China will help. China is helping everyone, for God's sakes. And this is the last thing. And then I will give it right back to you, because we hear a lot of negative comments, especially surrounding Africa and China. Oh, China is exploiting Africa. China is exploiting this. And the fact of the matter is, no matter what happens, sorry, I'm just trying to find this. No matter what happens, there are going to be things that are safety issues where, mines may collapse, things of that nature. There may be labor issues. And that's what people point to a lot when they talk to me about, Africa and China's involvement in Africa. I just want to ask you to juxtapose that to the West's involvement, because if there's a strike at a factory, China allows that strike to happen. They negotiate with the employees, and they work out something that goes down. If a safety issue happens, it is reported and it is fixed. But the West doesn't do that. The West completely stops you from protesting. The West buries its security and safety regulations to make sure it doesn't happen. So let's take a look at this, shall we? China grants duty-free access for nearly all products from Africa, weeks after the United States Congress approved a bill extending the African Growth and Opportunity Act. China's government passed its own legislation. Do you want to deal with the West, or do you want to deal with the global South? Your thoughts?
Yeah, again, right? This goes back to Americans have a fundamentally a misunderstanding of what power looks like, right? So we hear phrases like exploitation. Exploitation requires enforcement, right? So the first thing I would say is, without boots on the ground, you cannot do this. You know what I'm saying? You just can't. You have to enforce exploitation, or people would just do something else. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I'm going to go over here where this dude smacks me in the fucking face, or I'm going to go over here where this dude doesn't. Well, there is no AFRICOM that China has, but there is an AFRICOM that the United States of America has. So when you're doing business with the United States, you understand that there is guns on deck that can come to get that money back if you don't do exactly what they say, right? There's a gun pointed at your head at every single negotiation. If I say no and say, I don't want, to give up this land and allow it to be a drone base, right? What are the implications of saying no, right? We're going back to that coercion, understanding what that means. This is why it's important to look at through this lens. Where is this Chinese military in the Africas, right? That has this presence where it can go in and mandate these kind of things, right? These companies, like, ironically, it's kind of like Dune with Leto Atreides. China fucks things up because they don't have the corruption. And so it looks weird to American eyes, where we're used to processing everything through that lens. I say that to say, one of the long-standing Chinese positions of foreign policy is non-interference. as Americans, we're so used to going into countries and telling them these are going to be the values that you invoke to do business with American banks. You have to have these type of diversity standards, which America, mandates but don't do themselves, right? They have all of these rules for being able to do business with American companies, right? China does not do that. China doesn't go into your country and says, okay, well, 30% of the population has to be Buddhist, and you have to make sure that you're following these Taoist principles that we consider best practices, right? And so it's like, the Chinese do business with all kinds of governments. Like, and Americans will say this with a straight face. Like, we're not doing work with Bibi Netanyahu in Israel. Like, we're not doing work with the House of fucking Saud, right? Like, those are great human rights enshriners, right? Like, we're not doing work with all of these Epstein class monarchs in Europe, right? So, like, who is any American, liberal or leftist, to criticize, right, the way that China moves through Africa? Again, as a black person, right, not that gives me any type of authority, but I'm just here to say, as a black person, I feel like China's debt to Africa is far less than any Western country, less than less than France's debt to Africa, less than Germany's debt to Africa, less than Britain's debt to Africa, right? And it keeps going. Belgium, look at what Belgium did to the Congo. That country is still, those countries are still to this day trying to recover from the gross physical exploitation, which, by the way, was maintained by the Belgian military, right? Because again, this type of atrocity requires soldiers on the ground to maintain. So I ask you again, where are the armies? Where are the Chinese armies that are enforcing these horrible exploitative features that we continue to hear, right? And from the same mouths, it never have anything to say about IDF loans, which force you to invoke austerity on your people, to curb social spending, to use these monies specifically with these American or Western companies, right? I mean, it's night and day doing business with Chinese corporations and doing business with American corporations, doing business with Chinese banks versus doing business with Western banks. The IDF and the International Monetary Fund are notoriously predatory.
So you have China basically helping Iran specifically. Their missile technology is getting better, I think, because of China and Russia. But even China is just even another level in terms of what they can present and what they can't. And let's not forget, I know that Russia is not the Soviet Union, but the Soviet Union they dropped the ball on helping some of their allies in the past, and we hope to see that China doesn't do this. So you have China helping it on. They are literally spotting these planes over of Palestine. So they're helping it on and they're helping Palestine already. That's two right there, okay? They are helping Cuba. That should help. Anybody who's a leftist, they already should be on the side of China for that reason. They bought 87% of Venezuela's crude oil. They are one of the few places that can process it. And they are helping develop, well, I don't even remember how many it was, but it was like over 40 nations. They are now they're going to be duty free in Africa. So, and that's not it. And there's much more. We know that they just signed a deal with Russia that's going to help Mongolia out tremendously in terms of their development as well. And the rest of the world sees it. Maybe the Americans don't see it. Maybe we live in this bubble in, American exceptionalism and America's so great and blah, 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 blah. But the fact of the matter is the rest of the world, especially the global South, is looking towards China. And it's not just looking towards. They're already dealing with China. They're already trading with China. Most likely, if you are a country in Asia, your biggest trading partner is China. And that's how they do business because business runs the world, not to mention the Silk Road Initiative. And reports that their Navy is kind of getting to the point where they might be able to outperform the United States militarily, doing well, culturally, spiritually, all these other things. So there is no, I think it's okay. You don't have to. I think the China bad crowd they're starting to get a little less volume and bass in their voice, because without China, this looks like a much more dire world.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear the China bad crowd, all I hear is a bunch of British people yelling at black people, getting mad because you don't understand this ableist guy. He can't help it when he yells. You're an ableist people like that. Those are the people that are China bad. That's just, honestly, if you don't understand what ISR is, you probably should just shut the fuck up and not have an opinion. Because, like, I'm saying you don't have to, if you're commenting on things like China doesn't do anything. Because the reality is, one of the biggest reasons Ukraine is even still in the fight with Russia right now is because they have received first-rate American ISR for the last 4 years. Everything that's happening, every missile volley that's coming in, where it's going, what is coming, they have that provided to them from American intelligence that goes straight to the Ukrainians. This is NATO-level ISR. You know what I'm saying? Done by the country that probably does it the best in the world. And now you have China providing those same services, allegedly, to Iran. Like, that is not values free. That is literally information you could not buy, but you can if you're a friend of China. So, like, again, this is something that is happening that has value, that complicates these things. That's the number one question I'm getting in my DMs right now. Oh, when is this war popping off? Well, the war would have been popped off. But people are in people's ears right now saying, slow down. Let's take a look at this. This might hurt. This might not just be a victory lap. And every piece of resistance material, information, knowledge that is going to Iran right now from places like Russia, from places like China, that is keeping us one step closer to avoiding a potential catastrophe that has the ability to affect every single person that is watching this broadcast. Because if the gas prices explode, the economy, the worldwide economy, it grinds to a halt. And that will change everything.
Let's give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts, Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, so on and so forth. Fables, Foibles, and Other American Sins, Amoja's book of lovely and wonderful poetry. Go out and get that. We just did a poetry show with Matt Cedillo. It was so good, in solidarity with our Cuban poets and Cuban artists.
Cuba.
Yeah, we already know. What was that?
Vive Cuba.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so shout out to Matt and everybody that participated, and we'll try to put a little bit. We don't really put a lot of our own exploits on Inner City Left. We're analysts, all right. But yeah, in other worlds, we were spending a lot of time as artists, but we find this is also very necessary as the West collapses. We're going to say our piece, that's for sure. InnerCityLeft.com. Check us out. Fables, I already said that. Fables, Foibles, Other American Sins. But I'll say it again. Inner City Left on Instagram. Check out our music. Amin TMK, Lil Tanky. Patreon.com/InnerCityLeft. We got so much love for y'all. That's all I have to say. Thoughts and feelings. Tanky, anything we missed? Final words for today?
Nah, we good, man. Go out and give us a stream if you want. It's always useful. It's the best thing you can do. Put some music in your life.
There it is. For Amoja, Lil Tanky Summer, I'm Amin TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.